Hello, my loves, and welcome back to the It's Karmic podcast with me, your host, Vika Bradford. Today, I have the honor of bringing on one of my soul sisters that just kind of fell into my life at one point over the last few years. And her story is pretty fantastic, pretty Plutonian, and I cannot wait to introduce her to you guys. So today I have my dear soul sister, Krysta. Oh my God, I'm going to butcher your last name again. Francoeur. Did I say it right?
You did.
Krysta Trueheart. That's what I'm going to call you. Here joining me on the podcast. Welcome, welcome.
Yay. Thank you so much for having me. This is so much fun because usually I'm interviewing you.
I know.
I'm interviewing you on my podcast.
I
And
know.
it's so nice to be in this seat today.
We're swapping the roles. Like when I'm introducing you, because you're in this rebirth right now, my brain wants to go of wild remedies, but then my heart is like, no, now we're rewilding humanity. And so you're in this shift that we're going to talk about. And yeah, I've been on your podcast talking astrology, what, 3 times now?
Yeah, and about to be like 4, I think.
Going to be 4. We're moving into 4, and it's just become a thing. So now you get to connect in with my people and share the flip side, because you're like the Virgo I wish I was. The herbs and like the what is it, foraging, like what's the word, I was going to call it crafting, but it's not crafting. The foraging, the collecting, the working with the actual tools of the earth. That's the Virgo I wish I was. But I'm not her, so it's okay. But you get to bring that layer into my people's world today.
Yay. Yeah. Well, and I wouldn't say that's not you, because like you definitely have an interest. And this isn't something that I really got into. Like I knew I love nature and plants and all of these things. And there was this aspect of me that was just like, oh, that's just how things are. Like people like plants, you know? And it wasn't until I started working with intuitive coaches who were like, yo, like your whole jam is plants. Like you're meant to connect people with plants. Like the plants are talking to you. Are you listening? And I was like, what? Like, wait, what do you mean? Like, yeah, I know that I love plants. And, I have this company called Wild Remedies, and we make these cool potions that incorporate herbs and all of this stuff. But it wasn't until like maybe a year ago that I really was like, whoa, okay, I get it now. And I took this really cool course by this wonderful herbalist. Her name is Cami McBride. And she, oh man, what was the course now? It was basically about plant communication.
Oh my God, love it.
It was really cool. And as I went through this course, I just had all these like ahas and like was like started crying a few times, because the way that she described plant people and how we connect to plants, it's just things that happen throughout my life that I just never really considered or thought about it. And I realized so many potent memories and anchors and things that I have to my childhood all have to do with like a flower or a tree or whatever. And I was like, oh, okay. So it was like a whole other layer of communication that I didn't even realize that I had, or I didn't understand that language yet. And since I was attuned to it, then all of this other stuff started opening up. And then I was I was always out in the forest, but now I'm like really getting into like wild crafting and learning about herbs and making all different types of things with my hands in a different way than I was doing it before.
I love that. And it's all so Virgo. And as you're saying it, I'm like, oh my God, I'm thinking about how I've been so called to the Bach flower remedies my whole life. And a lot of my childhood memories are linked to like my mom and her garden and her teaching me every flower. And everyone's like, how do you know every fucking flower? And I'm like, because my mom told me every fucking flower. So when I see the flowers, I'm like, that's a this, that's a this, that's a this, that's a this. So you're giving me aha moments right now, and I'm loving it. So before we fully dive into this magic, I want to preface our magic we're going into with the process you have been through over the last couple of years, because that's kind of how you got here, is what I'm going to call a death process.
Yep.
So you and I connected, I don't know if we're going on, it must have been like 3 years. That was what, 2020, I don't know, 2020, 2021, approximately, guys. For anyone listening, it was around there.
Yeah.
And our first session, For everyone listening, Krysta, you were pretty new to getting your chart read at that point, right?
I think so. Like I had one chart reading done like back in 2018 or something. And yeah, I think that was it. Like I knew about astrology, but I wasn't really like, yeah, I didn't know that much about it at that time.
Yeah. And when we got into your chart, it was like the Plutonian shit immediately came to the surface.
Yeah. And I
Because
was like,
for any
oh, that makes sense.
right, anyone listening, Krysta has her Pluto in the first house, just as I do. We're both Libra risings. We're both Virgo suns, right? We're both Virgo suns. So like, so there were a lot of connection points, and a lot of things started to make sense. So, okay, take us through how you got to me in that reading, like what led you there, basically wild remedies, creating all that, got to that point, and then the death process.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it's interesting. Like when I reflect back on my life, there's just been there's been many challenges for me in my life. Many challenges. And it starts all the way from when I was a baby. And it's not something that I've really, well, yeah, there are times where I dwell on it and I'm like, this is fucking hard. Why is this so hard for me? Why aren't things easier? It seems like life is easier for other people, but it's just something that I've just put my head down and like pushed through, you know? And I think I had a conversation with you around the time that I had my previous business, Wild Remedies. And this is a company that I started about 7 years ago. And I had all of these really divine things that happened at the time that were just big messages for me to like start this company. I was living in Malaysia at the time. I was working for this company called Mind Valley overseas, and I'm a manifesting generator, so I'm always doing like a million things. And I had a startup at that time. I was working for Mind Valley, and then I was starting to feel like, oh, I really wanted to create this product. There's a product that I want to create. And then all these divine things happened and led me to medicinal mushrooms. And so I made this product, and for years I worked at this, and I would get these big hits of inspiration, and all of these divine things would happen in alignment that would move me in the direction of creating what I felt was my purpose in this life, was to create the best of nature for the betterment of humanity. That's what I wanted to do and was so passionate about. And I hustled at this and I fucking grinded for 7 years. And in 2020, just the timing aligned at that time, because I started working on expanding the product line and wanting to go big with it, I think in 2019. And so I started working with mentors and all these people, and I ended up moving to Kelowna, where you are now. And my manufacturers were there and all of this stuff, and raised a bunch of money through banks with guidance of all these mentors, and did all the things to launch these new products that I was so excited about under this brand. And then the fucking world falls apart. And so this new venture, I mean, it was just another stage of what I had already been doing, just did not start off on the right foot. And it was just such a grind. But it still felt like so much purpose, and just got to push through it. And startups are hard and all of the things. And I just felt like I was pushing and pushing and pushing, and there was just so much resistance. And in January of, what are we in right now? 2023. So January of 2022, I was at a point where I was running out of money again, because it takes a lot of money to get a business like this off the ground. Like, we had a lot of successes where we got into Whole Foods in our first year. Well, it actually took 14 months, because by the time a company like Whole Foods is like, hey, I want your product, it actually takes over a year before you get on the shelf. So there's all of these things that like you don't consider. It just takes a long time to get started up, and you need a shit ton of money. So I was running out of money. but I had all of this stuff like that I was seeing in my chart, like these partners of destiny, and learning about the North Node. We had that conversation, and like I realized that there was all of this thing around partnership that I need to have in order to have success in my life. And I was like, well, shit, I need to bring on investors, obviously. Like, I am ready for this. And so I went from a place of thinking that I was going to raise $3 million to just like blow this company up. And I had like this whole digital strategy that we were going to do. And again, masculine, 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 all of these things. But also in the back of my mind, I'm going like, I'm really tired. I've been doing this for a really long time. And I get like it's a big sacrifice and there's so much that you have to do a business like that. But I was also really craving this layer of femininity. And I was so tired of sitting in that masculine seat. And I don't know if part of that energetics that came in started the unraveling, but it was also, I think, destined because it was all in my chart. And we had a conversation around this time. And I was like, yeah, like all these good things and stuff, right? And you're just like, well, I'm looking at your chart right now and I kind of see like a midlife crisis in your future. And I was like, no, that's fine. And I use the pattern app all the time, right? Like I fucking love that app. And I see this cycle coming up called mission realignment and release in advance at the same time. Also, I have like so much other gnarly shit coming up. Like my chart is fucked until like 2025. Like it is so heinous, so heinous. So I'm just like, oh, that's fine. Like that could just be, let's low octave. Like I'm not going to do any of that. Like that's not for me. LOL, And so I'm in like this really positive place in January. And by the time these transits start hitting my chart, my life just starts fucking falling apart. And now all of my advisors are going like, hey, dude, love you, but nobody's going to invest in this business. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? I always just find money. Like I just, whatever, like I'm really good at selling all the things that I could do. And they're like, nah, man, like literally nobody's going to invest in this business. Like, I think you need to shut it down. You need to get rid of the debt. Cause that was the issue. I had a whole bunch of bank debt that I had to get in order to create the business. So anyway, I was like, okay, obviously tried to do everything in my power to like move around that and not have that happen. And hey, are there partnerships? Or this? Like I tried literally everything. And more things just started happening that just pushed that, hey, this is not happening to the forefront. Like just everything that could go wrong started going wrong. And I was just like, okay, I just threw my hands up because I saw it. I saw the energy and I was like, I can't fight this, like I just have to let it go. And so it was a whole process. Like it was wild. I was shocked. I was absolutely shocked. And largely because, this had never come up in sessions and stuff that I've had with intuitive mentors. Like it was always like, oh no, like you're meant to work with plants and you're supposed to do all these things. And I was like, well, fuck, like this is what I'm doing. Like, then why is it being taken away?
Yeah.
Like if this is my purpose, then why is this happening? And I was just like, well, I guess it is what it is. And I've had many moments like this before where like just big things have come in and wiped out my life. And I know, but what I could feel intuitively, because there's also this like weird part of me where when stuff like this happens, I'm just like, bring it the fuck on. Like I'm just like, okay, so if this is going to happen, then just show me how bad it's going to get. Like there's just like this angry sort of part in me that is just like, okay, if this is going to happen, like let's just do it. And working on like just the surrender, right? And so that's what I did. And I think through that surrender process, if you can do it, you get a lot of support. So I had like all of my people, my community that just came in and surrounded me. And yes, the process was fucking gnarly, but it could have been so much worse. Like I feel like I was really held through that process. And now that I'm on the other side of it, because that took several months, and geez, like even just like the last things of like the financial nightmare that I had to deal with, and dealing with the leftover product that I had, that wasn't wrapped up. Both of those things actually were wrapped up on the exact same day last week.
Wow. So in
And it was
eclipse
just
season.
out. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And it was just outside. Was it last week or the week before? But it was just outside of in the pattern out where it says release in advance.
Fuck.
Yeah. And so like, but it was just so wild that both of those things happened at the exact same day. Like I'd been waiting months and months and months for something to happen. And I was just like, whoa, it's so weird. So like it's all these synchronicities. I wouldn't say like they feel good or they're fun synchronicities. It's like you can see how it lines up exactly with the energy. And I'm just like, wow, like if there is any proof for astrology, like I like there's no doubt in my mind that this is how this shit works, because you just see it like so clearly in your life when you're paying attention to it.
Literally, the joke with me and my clients and students is like that we just all say you can't make this shit up, because we say it so often that we're like, you can't make this shit up, right? Because it's right there. And that it happened in eclipse season, which we were on the Taurus ending vibes, and like that it just everything. Taurus is your 8th house of endings. Like there's just so many things that align there. And as you were speaking to, for everyone listening, like this is kind of what it's like to have Pluto in the 1st house. Not to say this life will always be hard, but there will always be transformations. Like there will always be a moment of burn it to the fucking ground. There will always be a moment where you said like bring it the fuck on. That is Pluto in the 1st house, where you're just like, well, how are we transforming today? How are we dismantling and burning down this life cycle now? That's just part of the energy signature. So I love having you here to show it outside of my lens of having it, is like your lens of having this signature and being like, yep, it's kind of always like this, for better or for worse. Some of those burning down moments are like delicious, and some of them are fucking painful. And then on top of it, you had your transits happening too, which just highlighted everything.
Yeah, totally.
Fuck. Okay. Yeah. So big, beautiful baby that you love so much, loss, crisis, release. And your North Node, remind me, is in Gemini.
Yes, in the 8th
I believe
house.
in the 8th house, and I think it was in Placidus, it's in the 8th house, which is also release, letting go, dissemination, crisis, right? But also there's also many, many layers to that too. So it's just like another layer of you learning. So, all right, you go through the death process, you literally, a piece of you kind of dies, and now you're in the rebirth. So tell us about the rebirth that's happening with everything you're doing right now, because I'm fucking loving it.
Well, I'm glad you're enjoying it, because it feels really painful. Because there's a lot of confusion around it for me. And so this is a really interesting energy for me to deal with, because I'm the type of person that just always knows what they want, you know? Like I always know what I want, and I always know what my next step is. And like, I'm always, I just go after whatever I want. And prior to where I am now, I live like a really cool life. Well, prior to 2020 anyway, traveling and like doing all the things, like I just, yeah. And it feels almost like I'm in a prison right now.
Wow.
Yeah. So I have days where I'm just like, I'm in a box, and like, I don't know what to do. Like some days are okay, and I have little bursts of inspiration, and I'm like, okay, yeah, this feels good. And I've just been experimenting a lot more too. Like I'm trying to harness the information that I have in human design. I'm a 1-3, and so I'm meant to experiment, but there's also this energy of, I can't remember what the other thing is, but part of like my purpose is to become wise about the world and then tell people about it. So I decided to repurpose my podcast. So the podcast that I had before was the Wild Remedies podcast. And yeah, I had started it basically to promote the products.
Yeah.
But there was something about it that I was like, I think I need to keep this, or I'm just going to keep doing it for a little bit longer. And this is part of another thing that I have. I'm going to just like jump from all of these different types of
Totally okay.
systems, because
Mm-hmm.
they're just little things that come in that I'm integrating and understanding. But in my Gene Keys profile, like my purpose pearl is artfulness. And I'm a designer. I create beautiful things. You know, I love creating brands, products, all of that kind of stuff. But the way that Richard Rudd describes artfulness is like this ability to take shit and transform it into something else, something beautiful, right?
Wow.
So I kind of took all the broken pieces and just started reformulating them. And, you know, had been doing all of this wildcrafting, and I'm seeing people interact with me online in a completely different way now. You know, I'm starting to see more people come in through the podcast and be like, oh my God, like I resonate with all the stuff that you're saying. And I love all the things that you're sharing. So I'm sharing about wildcrafting and creating things with my hands. And now I'm noticing people reaching out and being like, hey, like, can you take me out in the forest and like teach me some of this stuff? Or like, are you going to offer some classes? Are you going to, you know, and I'm like, I don't know, maybe one day, because I'm still sort of in like this learning process and remembering process for myself. And I don't feel like I'm quite there yet, but I'm watching what is coming in and taking note of it and being like, okay, maybe this is a next step later down the road, because I still hold this vision for something that's coming as like land, like needing land and needing to live and work on the land. And I see this aspect of bringing community in, and maybe there's retreats or whatever. And I see this vision quite clearly. And I also had some really interesting downloads happen through this process of release, where I would have dreams or I would have really interesting insights, and I would be like, oh my God. Like one time I woke up and it was just like, I was sleeping. I woke up and I was like, oh my God, the plants don't want me to work with them the way that I've been working with them. I have to get rid of this business. And so like the thing that I was so upset about, I was like, oh my God, I get it. And then I was sitting outside and having a conversation with my friend and telling her about the insights that I was having. And then I looked up and a fucking bald eagle flew over my head in the middle of Kelowna. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that's confirmation. And it was just like a shift of perspective, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Huge.
I rebranded the podcast and now it's called Rewilding Humanity, and I'm hand making these really beautiful products. And there were products that I really wanted to release through the Wild Remedies brand. And even though that company is now not that company anymore, it doesn't stop me from creating, you know, like it doesn't, just because it's not called that anymore. It's like, fuck it, I'm still going to do whatever I want. And so I've started offering these beautiful products. Just actually this week, I launched some stuff for people to try. And so, yeah, now it's just an experiment, and I'm reformulating my design business and that brand, because I'm noticing people coming to me in different capacities than they were before. And so like, I feel the energy of there's something new for you, but now I'm in the process of like having to figure out what the fuck that is and like putting the puzzle pieces together, which is like, yeah, it's a bit of a struggle, but it's also fun in a way.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's so intense and beautiful all at once, this birth that you're in, so Plutonian. So it makes a lot of sense with everything. And even just as you're leaning in and saying all of this and thinking about your chart, like North Node in Gemini, that is you teaching, that is you sharing, that is you communicating, that's you talking, right? And then in whole signs, your 12th house is Virgo, which is you know, helping the collective come back to ritual, ceremony, connection with the earth, using the tools of the earth. So everything you're saying, I'm like, it's your chart, right? And I can see when we are so in alignment with our chart, not even thinking about doing it, like when we just align with it naturally, like that's when those people are magnetized to you. So when you're saying people are showing up in a different way now, it's like they're being gravitated to you falling deeper into alignment is what I'm seeing.
Yeah, I think so. It's funny because I'm getting those reflections and I have people just DMing me and being like, I love watching you create like this,
So much.
like these new
So
things
much.
that you're making. Like, it's just, we love it so much. And I'm like, oh, cool. Cause like I've been making stuff and sharing stuff for a really long time that nobody seemed to give a fuck about. And now
So funny.
suddenly there's like a bit of a shift, and it's still like I feel like it's not quite there. Like I'm still not seeing the growth that I'm hoping to, that I would like to see, but like it's just it's starting to click into alignment a little bit more.
Love that.
Mhm.
Okay. So I love this journey. I think it shows very, very real life explorations of how the cosmos are working through us. And like tell me and everyone listening what this vision of rewilding humanity is about. Because when thinking about you and everything you share on the podcast and your work and the things you talk about and you're passionate about personally, has knowing you, it makes so much sense, right? Because you care about health, you care about coming back to the body, even the conversation of having land, community, connection, in foraging and wildcrafting and all this stuff. Tell us what this means to you and what this vision you're sort of birthing is.
Mhm. Yeah. So rewilding humanity to me is just coming back to like what it actually means to be human. And that's so many different facets, right? To me, there's like a huge spiritual part of that, right? Like we are souls that are here in these meat suits, and not to say that in a derogatory way, because that meat suit is actually the thing that is born of this earth. And something that I'm very interested in and passionate about is like the theme of embodiment. And we've kind of been in the spiritual world anyway, we've kind of been sort of up here, like up top, and disconnected from body. And because I've had such an intense health journey my whole life, struggling with symptoms of the body, I've had to endure a lot of physical pain and a lot of trials and tribulations around physical health, mental health, even spiritual health. I dated a guy in a cult, and like that was a whole fucking thing. But
A
anyway,
whole other podcast that will be coming.
yes, yeah. And so I've just been stretched in like every facet of what it means to be a human. And I think that Gemini, right? And like there's so much of like this investigation that I need to do to like uncover why and what it means and like all the layers of it. And that's what we really talk about on that podcast. And so every place that I see that there is dis-ease, whether it's in society or whatever, like when I piece it all together, it's, disconnection from spirit, it's disconnection from Gaia, it's disconnection from our emotions, like all of these things that are now kind of trendy to talk about in terms of like health and whatever. But it's bringing that all together and creating facets and eventually physical community is what I would like to see through this brand as well, right? Because that's a huge part, and I know it's something that I've struggled with a lot in my life, where I've had little bits of like community and it's felt so good, and and then it kind of falls away. And I've also been very nomadic. I've lived all over the world, and so it's been kind of hard to ground. But I see that community kind of starting to come together again, which feels really good. And so that's something that I want to build and foster through this project as well. So that, yes, there's all this amazing information, and really working on trying to raise the vibrations, the frequencies. I see nodes, I see community, I see connection when I think of Rewilding Humanity, and then bringing those nodes and facets and people in at some point where we can actually like gather and create wholeness through community.
I love it. I love it so much. I think it's so needed too, right? And as you're saying this, okay, you might have an answer to this question, you might not have an answer to this question. It's okay if you don't, but I'm thinking about your journey you've just been through and embodiment and how that's so important to you. And I'm wondering if you have any guidance for our listeners. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. My goodness. Whenever I do a podcast, like the voice, goodbye. But what I'm thinking is, for anyone listening, do you have any embodiment like practices and suggestions to help them sort of come back to themselves, or whether it's rewilding or, you know, resetting through the madness with the tools that you work with? So the plants, all these things, do you have anything you can kind of offer to people listening?
Oh yeah, so many. So because I'm constantly, it seems like sometimes in the midst of a fucking dark night of the soul, I turn to nature for a lot of healing. And I love the concept of ecosomatics. I had somebody on my podcast recently. She is incredible, and we talk about this. And it's basically co-regulating with Gaia, with the earth. And anybody that is going through like a grief cycle, or is just feeling like nervous system dysregulation, water is so healing. It's so healing. This summer, when I was really going through it, like, and it was such a huge shift for me, because I went from having like this huge to-do list all the time, because my life has transformed so much in the past 6 months, where I was running like a big CPG company. I was the creative director for a big transformation company back or down in the US. Plus I had design clients on top of that. So my schedule was like packed, and I blew all of that up. Like I quit my job at Shift. I did like all the things. And so I had all this space, but there was also a lot of stuff coming up. And I would just go to the beach and lay in the sand. I would put my hands in the sand and my feet in the sand, and I would ground, and then I would just swim, right? You just like get in the water and swim. And I know it's getting cold now. So another tool that I like to use is just getting in a hot bath, adding all of the salts, crystals, also adding flower, like flower essence flowers to the water. And just get in there. You can even add some frequency. Like, oh man, I should create a playlist actually. Like just sob your eyes out, like the bawl your eyes out playlist. Like I have some really great stuff where it's just like booming bass, but like mournful, and it's so good. And you just have like these big releases, and then just intentionally let all of that emotion go down the drain in the tub. I find that really helpful. And then just being in the forest, right? Like there's so much, even just science around how our physiology can change just with the terpenes that are in the air from the forest can shift us. And the way that I like to explain it is like when have you ever just like gone on a hike and come back and felt worse?
So true.
Like never.
So true. Never. That's not a thing.
Yeah.
That's not a thing.
And just witnessing the majesty of nature. Like sometimes I find it's difficult for me to get out of the house when I've got all this work and stuff that I need to do. And then I like finally get outside and just go to the creek that's just around the corner from my place. And I'm just like, oh, yeah. Oh, you know, you get so wrapped up in your head, and then you just see like the actual real world and how beautiful it is. There's this aspect of nature that I think is so magical. And it's a way that we communicate and that we connect. And it's just the way that we feel awe and fascination when we look at something beautiful in nature. That there is communication. And so like, just as I said that, like I got chills going down my spine. Right. Yeah. That's another layer of communication. And so when we're working on heightening our intuition, or like wanting to have a better relationship with nature, it's just going to witness and just sitting in it. And a thing that shifted for me quite significantly, because the last year I've been working with a health practitioner and clearing stuff energetically through my body that has been really hard, like really, really hard on me, to the point where like it's been difficult for me to like walk to the end of the block and back without thinking that I was not going to make it home.
Wow.
So I've really, really, really had to slow down. And I used to just like plow my way through nature sometimes, right? Like, oh yeah, I want to
Mm-hmm.
see nature, but I'm going to go on a hike and I'm going to burn a bunch of calories
Yeah.
and I'm going to like climb up this mountain. I'm going to do all of these things. And I've been forced to dial that back significantly. And so the way that I visit nature now, and I mean, and I hate even saying visiting it because I just want to be immersed in nature 24/7.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's my goal. But like just really paying attention to things and noticing and being slower and more intentional. And I'm always touching everything that I walk by, and they're my friends, you know, and I'm saying hello and I'm greeting them, and smelling, like just smell is such a potent, I mean, aromatherapy is, you know, a huge industry for a reason, but I mean, it's just so easy to go out into nature and do that and really shift your state immediately.
And I love all of this because it's all free medicine. Like
Yeah.
it's all
Yeah.
free medicine. Might be a little more difficult when, you know, you're in a city, but there's still ways you can get into nature even then, right?
Mhm.
Whether it's going to a park, that might be your forest. But
Yeah.
I love it all because, yeah, it's free medicine. It's easy and accessible. And all it takes is making it a priority.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
And as you're saying all of this, I'm thinking about this morning, I had thoughts come through about my own human design because I'm a 6/2 manifester and my place is mountains. So like there's something about me that wants to be observing from above. Right.
Ah.
And so I was thinking about someone posted something. I was like, oh, okay, I'll go out to a coffee shop and I'll just kind of observe and people watch. And I do love that. But then what came through this morning was like, no, I actually receive more when when I climb up higher on a mountain and observe nature and observe from above and sort of just witness the awe of the world. So that's why I think living here is really important for me, is because I can climb up a mountain in 5 seconds and witness the expanse of the Okanagan. And I was like sitting with that and I was like, oh, that's all it takes. Like it isn't about me having to go anywhere other than into the forest and watching, as you said, nature just like do its thing, and being in awe for a moment is it's medicine for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's free medicine, baby.
Free medicine. And there's so many studies about forest bathing and all these things. And there was the best summer of my life, I think, honestly, was 2020 when it was dead as hell here.
Yeah.
And Josh and I went to the beach every single day. He'd come home from work around 4 o'clock, 4:10, and we'd go right down to Peachland, go into the beach, and we'd stay there for a couple hours every single day. And I don't really like swim, quote unquote, but I like stand in the water or float in the water.
Yeah.
Every day we did this. And it is one of the like core summers in my life of being just so genuinely happy, because every day I went, stood in that water and just received. And I would literally just watch the light codes on the water. I would watch the trees. I would look at the mountains, and I would just be, again, in awe
Yeah.
of everything around me. And that was medicine.
It is. Yeah, absolutely. Like one of my favorite things to do is, you know, similarly that. But I mean, if you can just find a creek and like sit down on the roots of a tree, put your back against a tree. Trees are very, very healing. Like
Madly in love with trees. I have to touch them all like it's a problem.
no, and it's great. No, I mean they love it. They love it. But there's so many ways that you can connect with trees and different meditations and things, but like just sitting there, grounding, connecting to the aura of the tree, and then when you're just looking out at the water and noticing like the little sparkles and things, right? It's like those fine little details when you're noticing those things, like it's just like a spiritual alignment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it really reminds me personally, and I'm sure others will resonate with it, that as much as we have to pay our bills, we need a roof over our heads, all these good things, we didn't come here to completely disconnect from nature and our bodies and work to the point of fatigue. Like we actually came here to enjoy being here on earth.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And this is where I see, I did a podcast on this a while back. I can't remember what it's called now. I think learning to talk to plants or something.
Love it.
But it was when I was I did a training. I went to forest school with,
Love it.
yeah, and my teacher is like this really cool, wacky guy. He's basically like a Sasquatch. Like we learn about Sasquatch, like we learn about the elementals, the fairies, all of those things. It was really cool. And this is where I learned about nature deficit disorder.
Ooh.
Uh-huh. And I was like, oh, that's what's fucking wrong with everybody.
With everybody,
Yeah, you know,
literally.
and that's really what the whole entire world is afflicted with right now, you know?
Mm.
Like, if everybody just spent more time outside and did some fucking shrooms, like, we'd probably be in a way cooler world. Just saying.
It's so true. It's so, so true. And
Yeah.
that's like, yeah, I'm going to start diagnosing people with that. You're like, listen, you just have nature deficit disorder. You're fine.
Everybody does though, like
Everybody
to
does.
some degree, right? Like even
Yeah.
myself, like even as much as, you know, I love being outside, I've created a life where I'm living in a city, like even, whatever, it's not a huge city, I'm in Kelowna, but to me
Yeah.
now at this point in my life, I'm just like, this is too much.
Too
I need to go to
much.
the bush. Like I've been wanting to go to the Coonies for a while. I'm like, just put me in the fucking
Okay.
forest. Like everyone leave me alone. But also nobody leave me alone because I'm a Libra rising and I need people and
Yeah.
all of that. But
You need your people.
I want both. I want both. You know, it's
Yeah.
never ending.
I
Can't
feel
be
that
satisfied.
pull. I
Yeah.
feel that pull deeply where constantly we're like, are we moving to the boonies? And then I'm like, but like I do want to be able to walk around to coffee shops. I'm like, what do I
Yeah.
want? So what do
And I
I
need to get my
actually want?
lashes done every 2 weeks, you know.
Right. I know, I know. We considered moving to Caslow, and then I was like, I'm not gonna have no one will be able to do anything, right down to like
Yeah.
the types of therapies I want, right? They're
Yeah.
gonna have a massage therapist, but that's where it's gonna stop.
Yeah.
Right? Who's gonna stab me with acupuncture needles? Like who is going to do cosmetic acupuncture on me? Where yeah, so I feel that torn energy as well with you. And I feel like a lot of people probably resonate on that, where we want our conveniences, but like we also
Mhm.
want to be in the bush and live in a hole inside of a mountain like a hobbit.
It's really difficult. I don't know if it's possible to have both. I mean, there is one place that I have my eye on. They definitely don't have the services, but I feel like the services will start showing up there soon because I think it's
Hey.
like this up and coming place.
Hmm.
But yeah, I know it's like it's the constant struggle, and this is where I'm really finding a lot of discontent in me right now because I know I also have this really big energy coming in. I did a Mayan astrology reading.
Ooh,
This was
amazing.
freaking cool. This was really cool for anybody listening who wants to check into this on the Rewilding Humanity podcast. Mark Emery, I believe.
Okay.
Oh man, I can't remember. Anyway, his episode's coming out in like 2 weeks or something, maybe
Amazing.
4 weeks.
So
But
it'll
this
probably
is
be
really
around when
cool.
this one drops.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so it's interesting how they break down energy, and you basically have these themes, these energetic themes at certain points in your life. And I'm moving into an energy first. It's really cool. This archetype for me is the warrior and the healer that I'm moving into, which I'm like, it's interesting. And as I'm looking at my social media content lately, I'm like, oh, I see it. Cause like I have like these nice soft, like where I really feel like I'm projecting my Pisces moon, right? It's like emotional and spiritual, and I'm connecting with the plants and all the things. And then the next post, you'll see me be like, this place fucking sucks. Like we're all slaves in this matrix, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, oh, wow. Yeah, that's a lot, Krysta. Like there's so much duality in the content that I'm posting that I'm like, okay, yeah, but I see that.
Mm-hmm.
They said there's also this energy that I'm going to be with for like, I don't know, 13 years or something, where it's just like super nomadic.
Hey.
And I'm like, okay, like I've done a lot of nomad stuff and I love traveling. Like I think my Mars is in Sag and
Your
my
south node
South
would be
Node.
there too. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you would have your in whole signs, your north node's in the ninth house too. So that's nomadic as well.
Oh, is it? Yeah. So I'm
Mhm.
feeling that, right? That I want to go and explore and all the things, but I'm also like, I've done the thing where I leave a community and like start the whole new life. And I don't want to do that all over again. So I think I need to figure out how to structure my life so I can do both. And like, I
Right.
fucking hate winter, right? So if I can get back to where I was before, where I was here, like in Canada for half the year and then somewhere else in the winter, I think that would be a really good balance for me.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's just shifting my life into that. And I feel like that's what this release with Wild Remedies was, because it was really holding me down in a lot of
Ooh.
ways. Like I had layered so much shit on top of myself, right? Like
Yeah.
so much debt, so much responsibility. Like I didn't feel like I could go anywhere. Like
Right.
there was always something that I had to deal with. There was constant fires to put out. And now that that has been released, I'm just like, wow, like I can literally go anywhere right now and do whatever the fuck I want, but I don't know where to go. Like I
What
don't
a
even know.
beautiful feeling.
No, it's actually quite difficult. Like, because I'm waiting for a couple of things to come in and then let it click. But I don't want to just go just to go. Like, I feel like there
Right.
needs to be like an aspect of community, or like there needs to be a purpose to where I'm traveling to. It's not just to go to like escape.
Yeah. No, like you're waiting for the call.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I'm waiting for something to respond to, like in human design.
Yes. Okay. There you
Yeah,
go.
yeah,
Mm,
yeah. So that's what I'm playing with right now. It's like, okay,
love
can I
it.
just like rein in these like really strong desires that I'm having right now
Yeah.
to like just freak out and fucking leave and do all this stuff, but can I just like relax, focus on like my intuition, see what's coming in, like let things come in to respond to, rather than like push masculine stuff. I'm just trying to allow and work in a more feminine way, which is a big shift for someone
Big
that like
shift.
type A as fuck for so long.
Right. Which is its own medicine, right? But like,
Yeah.
man, sometimes we don't want to take our medicine.
Mm-mm. No, it tastes like
Mm-mm.
shit.
Oh my God. Okay. I love this so much. So I just feel like you've offered a really good lens into what it can look like to actually live astrology.
Mm.
And when you're gently aware of it, how you can go with it even when it fucking sucks. Like
Yeah.
ride the wave instead of fighting the wave. I think that's really beautiful. And you've given like these beautiful free tools. Free tools, like the earth is free, guys,
Mhm.
to actually integrate and even carry ourselves through the madness,
Mm.
right? Like when you're in the thick of it, everyone listening, and this is for me too, when you're in the fucking thick of it, go to the forest, go
Yeah.
take a walk, go see nature, go connect, go fucking hug a tree.
Go
Go
hug
like
a tree.
go hug a
Everybody needs
tree.
to hug trees.
Literally, my trees that have been really, they've always been there, but they've been coming through really loudly right now is the cedars. And like I just keep calling them king. Every time I see them, I'm like, hi, king. Like
They're my favorite.
they're just kings. And so like I
Yeah.
just when I touch them, I'm like, like I just like I hold them and I'm like, hello, king, like thank you. So
You're so Virgo as fuck. Like,
right. So I know it's there. But I love this so much. So okay. Would you have any final thought to leave everybody off with today?
oh, okay. One thing that I know about having all of this Pluto energy and riding the waves of the low octaves of life over and over and over. A thing that brings me solace is understanding that nothing is permanent. And this is actually really helpful for me in many ways, especially when you have an experience that comes in that is just so intense. Like it could be like a panic attack or like a really, a lot of pain in the midst of like a health scare, or it could be, the death of a loved one, like these really intense periods that are just so painful. It truly doesn't last forever.
Yeah.
It might last a lot longer than you'd like, because I've had a few of those experiences, but there are always cracks of light, even through those longer periods of darkness. And again, like when I reflect back to like some of those longer periods that were so difficult for me, going to nature. Like when I think I had about a 6-month period after I went through a really devastating breakup, and I was extremely isolated. I moved to Utah for God knows what reason. And I was living in Salt Lake City, and I remember so much darkness there and so much pain. But I also, like, what I really remember is walking through the city, the beautiful parks and trees in the city, and through the hills and the mountains in around Salt Lake City, and just exploring, right? And just exploring and seeing new things and just being in nature as much as possible. And that's what got me through that period. So even if you, and I was very alone at that time, you guys, like that's when I really realized how important community was. I was like, oh shit, like no joke. Like this is like community is, we need this as human beings for our health.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that at that time until I experienced that level of isolation. But even through that depth, nature can still hold you. Yeah. So that would be my tip.
I love that. It's like the reminder that at the end of the day, we're all going to leave this world alone. And really what we have to rely on 100% is the earth.
Yeah. We come into
She'll
this
always
world
be there.
alone. We leave this world alone.
Mm.
And I don't think we're meant to live this entire experience alone. Right. And
No.
unfortunately, in our society, we've created conditions that make us feel like that. But we're understanding that and taking steps to remedy those things. So just slowly like find your people and make a fucking effort to see them. And yeah,
Go to
let's
the
just
forest.
and go to nature together. Exactly.
With them. Yes.
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, this is so good. Okay. Tell everyone where they can find you, how they can find you, where they can find your amazing creations, all the things.
Yeah. Okay. So my main Instagram is Magic Maven, MAGICK.Maven. And I post a whole variety of things on there. And I repurposed the old Wild Remedies account to Rewilding.Humanity. I post on it a little bit. Like I kind of keep that account, but I'm also just like, I think I might just get rid of it and focus on my main one. So if you want to know more about all the things that I'm creating, and I also post about the podcast, it would be that profile. And then I'll be sharing soon. I'm going to be sharing more about, so I have been a designer, a brand
I didn't
guru.
even know that you did this.
I don't tell, it's funny because my business has been very word of mouth and referral for many years, but now I'm feeling like I need to share it a little bit more. So I've worked with kind of like the most famous people in personal growth for several years. And I'm looking at ways that I can support more people for less barrier and like entry barrier. So if that's something that you're interested in as well, I'll be sharing more about that as well on that Instagram page, and then probably creating a new one. And that brand is called Brand Bruja. Bruja
I
means
love it.
in Spanish. Yeah.
It's so good. When you posted that, I was like, yes. And your creations and marketing and designs are honestly next level. So for anybody who is looking into, maybe, I mean, I've already had thoughts in my head of you rebranding the podcast. But for anyone out there that's like, looking for someone to assist me in, this creative director, creative marketing world, this is your girl. And I'm glad you're releasing it, because I was like, damn, what the fuck is this?
I know, it's so funny. I just started posting stuff and people were like, whoa, what? Like this
I know. I was
this
like,
is what you've been doing? I'm like, yeah, This is actually how I make money. I never made a dime through wild remedies. Like it was probably time that bitch died. Like she was just taking a lot from me, you know?
Fuck. Oh my God, it's so wild. So I love that you're letting the cat out of the bag. Very 12th house son of you. So to like be hiding that for so long, I see you. So for everyone listening, that's where you can find our dear, dear love Krysta today. And go follow her. Go see all the, I'm obsessed with your wildcrafting videos and your foraging videos. And like, I literally sit back and I'm like, oh, I'm coming with you next time. So I know everyone else will be obsessed too. And just all the like knowledge you're sharing. It's really beautiful and cool. And thank you for your time and your energy.
Oh, thank you so much. This was actually helpful for me to talk all of this new stuff out as I'm
Yay!
rebirthing. I'm like, okay, yeah, this feels like purpose. It feels good. So thank you.
You're so welcome. For everyone, I will link everything in the show notes for you guys so you don't have to search anywhere for it. And I cannot wait to hear what you guys have to say.